Never expect a state court judge to be on time.
Hey, John.
Hey!
I'm sorry. I'm late.
State court tends to be late.
Well, we're busy. You know how that goes. We had a petition for rehearing filed this morning on a case that we decided last month, and I was just taking a look at that before I came over.
You actually look at those things. Well, sometimes if you get it right the first time, you really don't have to worry about it the second time.
Well, it must be nice to be infallible in sitting on a federal court.
Sure.
But at the state level, we can actually admit that on occasion we might make a mistake.
Okay. Maybe someday we'll get there.
Anyway, so I was looking at this petition for rehearing, and let me ask you this: how many of those do you see over in the Ninth Circuit?
Well, since I know my court very well, last year we had 736 in our court, but only 8 were granted, so 0.01%. So
wow,
pretty low number.
That is. Last year, I think at the Court of Appeal here in San Diego, we had about 120 that were filed. We granted 8 or 9 of them. Court of Appeal up in Riverside seems to grant fewer, but that may be because they have that tentative decision process.
Yes.
That may impact how many of those that they grant. But so now I've often thought that even petitions for rehearing that are denied can sometimes have a significant effect because the court has to modify its opinion in response, or chooses to modify its opinion. Is that something that happens at the Ninth Circuit?
Yes, actually. I think it's more common for that to occur where an opinion will be modified with the petition for rehearing still being denied than an actual petition for rehearing to be granted. So they can have an effect, maybe not a huge effect all the time, but in certain cases it certainly will.
Yeah, I think that's true. The changes can be anywhere from minor to fairly significant, depending on the nature of the issue and so forth. So now let me ask you this. In terms of petitions for rehearing that are granted, and I know that that's a
hypothetically
rare occurrence
absolutely
in the Ninth Circuit, but what kind of circumstances will cause you to actually grant a rehearing petition?
I think usually when I've seen it most frequently is when there's been an error by the court in the facts. Oftentimes these records in these cases are very complex, and we may get a distance wrong, we may get the name of a party wrong, hypothetically, and we want to get that right. So that's where I've seen it granted. Sometimes it might be a little more dramatic than that. It might be that an older case has been brought up that should have been brought up by the parties in the first place that may actually cause us to make significant changes to the opinion. But those are pretty rare.
I see. I would think that from our perspective, I've seen 2 instances that can cause our court to grant rehearing most commonly. One of those would be where there's a new statute that becomes effective between the time the opinion is filed and the time the rehearing petition. And actually that's happened on a few occasions recently. We've had a number of rehearing petitions that have been granted on that basis. Then there's also the case where a new Supreme Court case will come down, and we clearly have to take note of that, but that's a rare occurrence.
Well, you know what I like, you said our perspective, because that reminded me recently in an argument, a litigant kept calling me Justice. I thought to myself, I want to look at the guy and say, you think I was appointed by a governor? Come on, baby, I'm presidential.
I would have thought that would have made you feel good.
Come on. Says the guy whose courthouse is where Carrot Top performs, the comedian. Yeah.
Well, so let me ask you this in terms of new authority. You mentioned a minute ago that sometimes you may find out about even an older case in a petition for rehearing. Now, if the lawyers missed it, if it should have been in the briefs, is there ever an instance where you're going to take a look at that on a petition for rehearing?
Look, at the end of the day, we want to get it right, and so I would like to think my colleagues would still get it right. They may chastise the lawyer. I mean, the lawyer should not do that. The lawyer is costing his client money by failing to get that right the first time. But at the end of the day, if there's a controlling case that everyone missed, that would be an instance where we want to get it right.
How important do you think it is for the lawyer to be upfront and honest about that when they file their petition for rehearing?
Crucial. Because the other side, if we call for a response to the petition for rehearing, is going to say they waived it. And maybe it does fall within the doctrine of waiver. So the more honest you are with the court, that's always a good idea. I think the better the result's going to be.
Okay, well, what do you got going for the rest of the day?
Well, we have some habeas corpus petitions. We have to review what the state courts do, make sure that they're following federal law. So that does take up a lot of my time.
Well, we want to keep you busy, that's for sure.
Yeah, and you guys succeed at that.
That's good, that's good. All righty.
Well, I got to get out of here. Some new Supreme Court cases are coming down. I want to make sure we're solid there.
I saw where the Supreme Court granted cert in another case of the Ninth Circuit.
Yeah. I'm sure we were interpreting California law because the California Supreme Court probably hadn't gotten around to it.
Oh.
So, it's probably one of these issues that's been sitting before the California Supreme Court for like 10, 15 years, and they haven't gotten around to deciding it.
I see.
And so we got to step in and, once again, got to kind of do their job. It's all right. It's no big deal.
Well, given the number of cert petitions that are granted on Ninth Circuit cases, John, maybe you should start paying a little bit more attention to those petitions for rehearing.
That's a good point, and especially the ones coming from review of state court decisions.
All right.